Hi, this is an overview of the lab where we focus on scientific notation. Scientific notation makes very big and very small numbers easy to write. Scientific notation numbers are numbers written in the form of m times 10 to the nth power. M and n are variables there. M is what we call the coefficient. It's a number between 1 and 10, and then n, the exponent, is a whole number. For example, you have 1.19 times 10 to the 8th power. M in that case is 1.19, and n is 10 to the 8th. Or you might see a number in scientific notation like 2.867 times 10 to the negative 5th. 2.867 is the m, and 10 to the negative 5th is where the n comes in, n being specifically the negative 5. The coefficient is always a number between 1 and 10. That coefficient number, the number out front, shouldn't have anything in the tens or hundreds place. So for example, 23 times 10 to the 4th power is not scientific notation because 23 is not a number between 1 and 10. The coefficient there has something off in the tens place, and that's not correct scientific notation. Here's some examples of big and small numbers. A gram of the element hydrogen has 602 hexillion atoms of hydrogen in it. Hexillion means a trillion, and then 6 more zeros after that. How did they know this, by the way? They did chemical reactions comparing reactions with different amounts of hydrogen with other elements like oxygen or nitrogen. They also compared electrical charge of the different elements. I just point that out so you know these numbers didn't just come from nowhere. They're not made up. Anyway, with big numbers like that, all those zeros can be expressed as 10 raised to an exponent. There's, let's see here, let me bring the cursor in, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions. There's 100 trillion cells in the human body. A red blood cell is very small. It only measures 0.00028 inches in diameter. A red blood cell membrane has a thickness of 0.0000003 inches. Or the weight or mass of an atom of gold is 0.000000000000000000327 grams. That's a very small number. All of these zeros in these very big and very small numbers can be simplified down to a mathematical equation expressed as 10 raised to an exponent. The point of scientific notation is to save our writing from zeros upon zeros upon zeros. To understand scientific notation, you should remember the powers of 10. Down here, we can remember the number 1 can be expressed as 1 times 10 to the 0 power. That's a funny one, but you have to know the rule that anything raised to the 0 power equals 1. So that's really saying 1 times 1. 10 to the 0 power is 1. And so it's just a way to re-express the number 1 by itself in this scientific notation form. We have m times 10 to the nth power. Or we can get bigger, and 10 can be expressed as 1 times 10 to the first power, because anything raised to the power of 1 is itself. 10 to the first power is 10. So 1 times 10 is this. Beyond that, you have to remember 10 squared is 10 times 10. So 100 can be expressed in this format, 1,000 can be expressed in this format, and so on and so on. Larger numbers have larger exponents on 10. Just to review, I'll tell you that 36,000 is written in scientific notation as 3.6 times 10 to the 4th. What's the coefficient there? It's 3.6, the number out front. They didn't write it in 36. They didn't write 0.36. They went till there was something in the ones place. And then what is 10 to the 4th equal to? Well, you could say that a couple ways. You could say it as 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. Whoops, one extra 10 there. That's my mistake. Or 10,000. So the exponent, the 4, indicates how many times the coefficient of 3.6 has to be multiplied by 10 to equal the number 36,000. So 36,000 is written as 3.6 times 10,000, or in scientific notation, that's 3.6 times 10 to the 4th. We moved the decimal place. Now you don't see it there, but we know the decimal comes after the 0 in a number, and to put it into scientific notation, we moved it to the left. And then the exponent got bigger every time we moved that decimal to the left. Here it is in a pattern. The original number, 36,000, right here, could be expressed with the little extra bit of times 10 to the 0. Remember, 10 to the 0 is just 1. So this was our original number. In this pattern, we can see that when we move the decimal to the left, the number isn't changing in value because we're raising the exponent. All these things are equal to each other. We're just writing them in a different way. And as the exponent on 10 goes up by, the sequence, the decimal moves to the left until we get to just something in the ones place. Now you could take this pattern past scientific notation. If you understand the math of what we're doing, if we go a step further, what would be there? If you understand, we'd have 0.36000 times 10 to the 5th. And that continues the pattern of moving the decimal and raising the exponent. If we went a step backwards, we'd get a bigger number from the beginning, and the exponent would decrease down to -1. So here's what we'd get up here if we used the math and went backwards from our original number. If the decimal is moving left, the exponent is going up. But we could move the decimal to the right, and the exponent continue to go down into negative numbers. That's possible. The main thing you had to see was to put this number, 36,000, into scientific notation. We moved it until we got to here. As a review, for big numbers with lots of zeros, the exponent is positive and equals the number of places the decimal point has been moved to the left to get to the coefficient. If you wanted to go back from scientific notation to normal notation, you'd have to move the decimal place 4 places back to the right. Let's practice one more. To express 250,000 in scientific notation, you have to recognize where is the decimal at. Then you see it's a big number, and so we're going to have to move the decimal to the left till we get to the ones place. So move the decimal so there's only something in the ones place. You have to count how far you moved the decimal. We moved it 5 places. So the answer is 2.5 times 10 to the 5th. We took this number and put it into scientific notation. Now for small numbers, this is the other half of scientific notation. You have to remember that the negative powers of 10 are based on algebra that says anything raised to a negative power is equal to a fraction of 1 over that number to the positive version of the exponent. So down here, we have the same thing we had before. 1 can be expressed as 1 times 10 to the 0 power. But following this piece of algebra, if we have a tenth, we can express that as 1 times 10 to the negative 1st power, or 1 over 10 raised to the 1st power. It's 1/10 here as a fraction, here it is as a decimal, and here it is as scientific notation would express it. And the pattern continues. 100th is 1 times 10 to the negative 2 power. That's the same as saying 1 over 10 times 10, or 1 over 100. Here's the fraction, here's the decimal, here's what it would look like in scientific notation. And that pattern just continues. We get smaller and smaller as we have more negative exponents on the 10. So here's a small number, 0.0081. You all know that this first 0 is mostly just a placeholder. It's there so we can see what the decimal is at. The zeros we're concerned about are these two, 0081. To put that into scientific notation, we moved the decimal to the right, and as we moved the decimal to the right from here, the exponent went down, 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 and we stopped at this point, 8.1. We stopped with something in the ones place. If we kept going like we did before, we'd end up with 81. Now that's not scientific notation. We went too far. But you can see that the power of moving the decimals around still applies. Or likewise, if we went back to the start, if we moved the decimal in the other direction, the exponent would go up. Moving the decimal left makes the exponent go up. Moving the decimal to the right, to put this small number into scientific notation, we had moved the decimal to the right. And at the end of it, we got rid of these zeros because they were just placeholders. To review, for small numbers, the exponent is negative and equals the number of places the decimal point has been moved to the right to get the coefficient to the right spot. If you want to go back from 8.1 times 10 to the negative third to normal notation, you'd have to move the decimal place back to the left and put in zeros to where they were. Here's one more example. Express 0.0000009705 in scientific notation. This first 0 doesn't matter, it's a placeholder. You're going to move the decimal just past something so there's something in the ones place. Count the number of places the decimal was moved. And you can see here, we had moved it 7 places. There's 6 zeros, but we moved it past this one. This last one right here, it moved past 9, so that was the 7th place. So the answer is 9.705 times 10 to the negative 7. That's scientific notation. To put it back, we would have to move the decimal place 7 places back this way. The first step goes past the 9, then we'd put the 6 zeros back in. Please take note, calculators or Microsoft Excel or other spreadsheets might express scientific notation as e to the 10th. So what that 10th means there is times 10 to the 10 power, or times 10 to the negative 10 power. Since they only have one line to work with, they don't put in exponents in the upper, superscript when you put the exponents up high. Calculators can't do it, so they use the letter E. Finally, if you had done a problem like this, 65,000 kilometers converted to scientific notation is this. Say you knew you had a very accurate measuring tool, like with lasers or something, and you wanted to show that you weren't just rounding up, that you knew that it was exactly 65,000, to the point. You could keep in zeros, and that shows that these are what you call significant. In a chemistry class, they talk about significant figures. But the point of extra zeros like this in a piece of scientific notation is to show that they matter, that they're not just rounding up or saying something's approximately something. So that was your lab on scientific notation. Please apply this to the problems in the assignment. Thanks for your time.